Welcome to the Poultry Keepers Podcast, where we talk poultry from feathers to function. We cover everything from chickens to ducks. And today it's part 1 of Turkey Talk 101. Whether you're new to raising turkeys or looking to improve your flock, we've got everything you need to know. From brooding delicate poults to choosing between heritage and commercial breeds, setting up the perfect turkey housing, feeding for optimal health, and even processing your own birds, we've got expert tips to help you raise happy, healthy turkeys. Stick around, because we're about to talk turkey.
So where do you start with turkeys?
Normally, it's pretty easy to get started with poults, the little babies, and they are very different from raising out baby chickens or other species of poultry because they have to learn by doing. And someone is going to have to parent those babies. And it's going to be you. And that learning process can take up to 2 weeks to really get them going well with eating and drinking. And I personally love turkeys. I keep a flock of White Holland turkeys for growth rate and size more than anything, because they were bigger than some of the other types that we had, but they still need that hands-on brooding. And I'm in there from the moment they hatch and get to the brooder. I'm showing them the food. I'm showing them the water. I go back 2 hours later and repeat the process. And they'll end up bonding to you. And some of them, they're like a golden retriever. I have one little male already who is trying to follow me everywhere I go. So raising them is a fun experience. The only downside is when people start with commercial turkeys for their first turkeys, and they raise them with the intention to eat them. And then they realize this turkey turned into a puppy. Now I can't eat it. So knowing your ability
You need to set boundaries
through on processing.
Yeah.
You may find yourself with pet turkeys down the line.
So something that I found, that bonding, there's a very fine line between having a well-adjusted turkey and having a trip hazard every time you try to move out in the barnyard.
Or if you're building something outside.
I like to have my poults bond and learn from chicks. If I could have chicks hatching at the same time the poults are hatching, to me that's ideal, because they have something and somebody to watch and learn from.
Yeah, and it helps
also
create
bond
separation.
Too. And when they're out in the yard, they could be buddies out in the yard and leave me alone so I don't trip over them.
When I was raising turkeys, when the turkeys would hatch, I'd get about a week-old baby chicken and put in there with them. They were far enough advanced they could teach them all that kind of stuff without too much trouble. Y'all were talking about bonding. And Jeff Maddox at Purtrell did a study one time. They had an intern there, and her main focus of her job was to spend about at least 30 minutes a day just going down there and interacting with those turkeys, the baby turkeys. And Jeff said they'd be sitting on her head and on her shoulders. And he said, surprisingly, they divided them into 2 groups. One got human interaction, one were just hands off. The birds, when they processed them, the group that received human interaction weighed a full 1 pound more than the birds that got no human interaction.
Interesting.
So there's a lot to be said for that. It can have a financial benefit.
Absolutely.
Interact with your turkeys.
If you think chickens are wonderfully therapeutic, turkeys are really amazing. They're like something, Mandy, you said, between like a poultry puppy.
Yeah, poultry puppies.
Poultry puppies. They really are.
Now, I have encountered a mean Tom. I have seen aggression early on, and that was with a group of Bourbon Reds I had. And the first Tom that was with my group, he decided with his spring hormones, because just every other bird, once spring rolls around, those hormones, they start coming in strong. And he was adamant that I was an adversary. And I couldn't break him of it. There was no fixing it. Once he picked me as a focus, I was done for, because once a turkey finds a focus, they won't let it go. So we had fried turkey in July. Once I had a group of babies on the ground, and I grew those babies out, and I picked out a new one who had a way better temperament. So they can be aggressive, but in my experience with all the different ones we've tried, it only happened the one time. Everything else was sane and level and as intelligent as a turkey can be.
So,
You know-
in all your experience, have you found that there's anything different in the incubation or the brooding process with turkeys besides having to constantly show them where everything is for the first couple of days?
Keeping that humidity right where it needs to be is very important, because the egg size is larger than that of a chicken egg, and they take 28 days to hatch instead of 21. So over those 28 days, you really want to monitor the air sat to make sure it's losing enough moisture without it being too much moisture. So it's the same thing of finding your incubation balance with humidity, erring on the side of less humidity, because if it's too high, it's not going to lose the moisture and they're not going to perform well in that last week. And I prefer 40 to 45% humidity for the first 21 days of incubation. Anything less dried them out too quick, anything more drowned them. But it depends on your ambient conditions and your incubator.
Okay. And the brooding process,
Pretty much the same as chicken, but you're going to need more space really quick, because they're going to grow tall very fast.
Yes.
okay.
They can outgrow their brooder before you can turn around.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking about people who already have all this equipment and are thinking about, hey, maybe I'll get a couple of eggs. So the first thing is, a single turkey is going to be miserable.
Correct. They
Don't
love
do
to
that.
have friends.
Don't
Yes.
do that. Set at least 6 to hope to get 2 or 3. I wouldn't try to raise just a single turkey.
Yeah, talk about it in your pocket puppy dog.
Yeah.
That turkey will never know it's a bird, even if you did raise it with chicks, because they have a lot of vocalizations, and they
Mhm.
have a
Oh,
high
okay,
rate of
okay.
communication.
Yeah. And if they're lonely, they're going to express that in their vocalizations, and that could call in every predator within a while. They have a very carrying call.
As well
So
as
it may not
wild.
be the type of attention that you want. Now, if you have a hen that you want to inseminated by a wild tom, I've heard that will produce one of the tastiest birds imaginable.
Which is true, but you might also never see her again.
Right. But it's something we've talked about on the podcast in the early days. I definitely want to do that someday, because we do have wild turkeys everywhere around here, to the point where, again, we don't hit the brakes for them when they run out into the road. And that's actually pretty important when these are hatching natively, is they need to learn a respect for the road traffic, because in town or in cities, they could cause problems if they don't learn this early on.
Yeah.
Because people think they're cute and they hit their brakes and they cause traffic problems, and it's just not good.
Let's talk a little bit about, excuse me, why people raise turkeys and getting started. And to me, the first decision comes down to, are you in it just for meat? Or do you want to show, or do you want something a little more along the lines of a heritage bird? The meat turkeys are modern hybrids, much like modern broilers, and they grow extremely fast.
Boy,
And
do they. They can be ready for the freezer in as little as 4 months. And it's
Yeah.
important when you make that choice for meat, you don't necessarily want to bring the double-breasted commercial type to your farm to grow too early in the season, unless you're going to process it when it's at the size you want it to be. So if you think about when Thanksgiving is, and then you backdate that 4 to 5 months, that's a good time to get commercial birds. Because if you go out and get them now, that bird is going to be 45, 50 pounds or more by the time we get to November.
Yes. They
Well,
have an amazing feed conversion ratio. Turkeys are
Yeah.
like top of the heap when it comes to how much you put in them versus how much you get back out.
And there's a tipping point of when they're no longer efficient. So you want to time it right for your harvest window. if you're doing the commercial birds.
Yes.
I think heritage breeds are much more forgiving.
Yes, they are.
They grow much slower.
They breed naturally too.
They breed naturally. You're probably looking at 6-7 months to get one ready to process. They breed naturally. They come in a variety of color varieties. And we were talking about this before we went on the air. But if I were to ask y'all, how many breeds are there? How many turkey breeds are there?
1.
There you go. Winter turkey dinner. Almost said winter chicken dinner.
I'm thinking Tyson, Butterball.
Yeah, there's brands, not breeds.
Brands, not breeds. So what is when we hear broad-breasted bronze, to me, that's the most prominent one that I think of. And I just think of the domestic or wild turkeys.
The broad-breasted bronze, colored like a wild turkey would be, basically. And that was one of the early ancestors of the modern hybrid turkeys we have today. And most of the hybrids you get are white. And that's simply because when they're processed, they don't leave those little dark pin feathers and little flecks of color all over the carcass. It comes out perfectly clean. But, like we said, they get big. I have seen 70, 75-pound toms. They have hard problems getting around.
Yeah, I've seen them when they're a year old, tumbling around, trying to walk like a graceful elephant, maybe.
But the heritage breed comes in many different color varieties, and some of them are pretty striking. But all the color varieties and turkeys we have, descended from mutations of the bronze turkey. And I was back when in my good old days when I worked for the Game and Fish Commission, I was at the Wildlife Research Lab and was talking with our statewide turkey biologist. And he had a drawer open. He had study skins, which basically when he would kill a bird, he'd skin it out and make a study skin out of it. And he said, pull up that next drawer down. And I did. And there was beautifully colored bourbon red turkey and a beautifully colored black and a royal palm. And he said all of those were wild turkeys that he collected out into the wild. They're all the color mutations of the bronze turkey.
When I first got into turkeys, I fell in with bourbon red after I fell in with Narragansett black turkeys and some others. And I noticed there was some variation to size based on their genetics. And the bourbon reds I have were pretty great, but then I got bred into a corner and it was too tight and I couldn't find that depth of color I had, and everything else was washed out. So I was like, let's go ahead and try some other colors. So I did an order through Porter's Heritage Turkeys, and that program produces so many color variations. And I knew I wanted to try the White Holland, and then I had to pick some other colors to offset my order in case he didn't have enough to send. So I picked penciled turkeys, sweetgrass turkeys, and something else. And then when I had them and I was raising them out and I was looking at those white turkeys and I was like, I wonder if that's recessive white or dominant white. So that next season, I let the White Hollands breed with the other colors, and it opened up this massive can of worms. And I saw chocolate turkeys, pencil turkeys, like it was the rainbow colors of turkeys. Yeah. Now, when you breed the same color to the same color, you usually get that same color again. So if you want chocolate, you breed chocolate to chocolate. If you want penciled, you breed penciled to pencil. If you want Narragansett, you breed that color together and you get more. But once you let those colors mix up, man, it opens up a bunch of opportunity because a turkey is a turkey. That was a good spring.
It's a good lesson in how important selection has been and how important it is to keep up with.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And then since I never saw a white turkey from that, I knew right off the bat they were recessive white because they didn't throw white when they were bred with any other color. So that was neat.
One thing I like about, I have a love-hate relationship with it. with heritage breeds is they can fly just as good as a wild turkey.
Girls can, yeah.
And they want to roost just as high up in the tree as they can get.
Uh-huh.
And I've seen them up in the tip tops of some of the oak trees around here. And I just marvel at how a bird that size can fly it like they do. It's pretty incredible.
My turkey pen is covered.
Good idea.
Now, I have noticed that if I raise them undercover for their first year and then I start letting them range, they don't try to fly much at all because they never learn the skill. So my turkey pen opens up into my apple orchard, and now I can open up their gate and they could go range in there and they don't leave that pen because I've trained them not to, maybe. I don't know. But if I let them in the apple orchard, I find them there later in the day and not elsewhere.
Another thing about raising baby turkeys, it's almost, and I was talking with Frank Reese about this. I said, Frank, it's like baby turkeys have a death wish. And he said, yeah. He said, when you hatch them, they start looking for ways to kill themselves.
Curious and nosy.
They are so curious, they get into everything. And at that age, they're not really afraid of anything. They haven't gained a healthy respect of things they ought not to be messing with.
And they like to approach things as a group and then circle around it. And there's a couple of videos circulating online that show a ring of wild turkeys walking around something weird. Maybe it's a predator. Maybe it's a car. Maybe it's a weird looking fence post.
I've seen them do that with a rattlesnake one time out in the woods. And it was just like head to tail, going around and around that darn snake till they saw me, and then they were like rockets taking off.
When they're being curious, they have this whole series of vocalizations of clicks and chirps and what's that? I don't know. Do you know what it is? Someone go look. It's pretty fun.
You could spend hours just sitting on the porch with a iced tea in your hand, observing.
Now, nutritionally, the babies do need better than chick starter. Nutritionally, they're a lot different than chickens.
Their growth rate is so fast. They need more, but not too much protein.
They need a touch more protein, more amino acids and vitamins and minerals.
Especially
because to keep up with that growth rate, it takes putting a lot of nutrition in them.
Most of the starters are 26% all the way up to 30% for the first couple of weeks. And then you can start backing that protein down as their growth starts to level off. But those starters, they need to be potent for the first couple weeks.
Yeah, and honestly, those real high protein starters up in the high 20s and 30s, I never used that kind of starter simply because my birds were performing well, probably 25, 26%.
As long as you get the proper amino acid profile, which usually a commercial feed's not going to have it off the shelf, unless it's just not. There's a few brands that may have a really great nutritional profile, but often you need to supplement it yourself. And in doing so, you're naturally going to be boosting your protein levels up anyways slightly.
The other problem with those high protein feeds is that they're jacked up that high because with high protein content, because they have so many fillers in the feeds that the birds have to eat much more of it to get the nourishment they need.
Just to be able to form the pellet. It's in there for no other reason than to be able to form that pellet.
Yep.
And turkeys, it's even more important as they grow, keeping the grit appropriately sized. They're going to need a lot bigger grit later on in life.
Oh,
you would not think that they could swallow golf ball sized rocks, but they do.
Oh, they do. And it might not even be a rock at all. It might be some other dumb thing they found and swallowed.
Lighters, 22 shells. You'd be amazed at the things I found inside turkeys on harvesting day.
Turkeys are one of the reasons why I always check the gizzard when we're processing, just to see what in the world they found. And their gizzards are 3 times the size of a chicken gizzard. Their crops, when they're 10, 12, 14 weeks old, their crops are like a bottomless pit.
And if you've given them appropriate sized grit, those gizzards will get really big.
Because that muscle's working.
Yeah, it's working.
Proper
It's
gizzard
working.
action. You betcha. And
Let's
it's
talk.
extracting more protein and more nutrients, and that's how it's supposed to work.
Let's talk a little bit about space requirements. Mandolin, what works well for you with your turkey flock for space?
It depends on if you want them to have forage forever in their pen, because you're going to need 60 to 80 square foot per bird if you want to have any shot at keeping grass around. So my biggest run coming off that barn for my little group of 5 turkeys, it's huge. And I still have to let them out to find more forage elsewhere because they are very busy birds.
A perpetual motion machine. They don't really just stand around a lot. If they're up and awake, they're doing something, checking
And
something.
chattering to each other the whole
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of space. Now, when I'm doing my Thanksgiving birds, I'll put them in a tractor to prevent the distance because they'll cover a lot of distance if you let them. And normally, right about June, July, I start getting a significant amount of requests asking for just a female turkey. Because if they are free range and they start feeling broody, they're going to head off into the woods and find a spot right on that coyote trail to lay their nest. And I've had people who they've had the same Tom for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and he might be on his 5th or 6th or 7th wife because they can take off and try to nest. So I do keep them penned in the biggest pen I could give them, and they still get supplemental range space. There's no such thing as too much space for a turkey. But the one thing you don't want to do is put them in tight confinement and expect them to be happy. It's 3 to 4 times as much space for a turkey than a chicken.
Easily.
And the roost space, you want 3 foot of roost space per bird, and you want to keep your roost pretty low down because if you're coming down off of height, they may injure themselves because they'll crash land. So I have my roost only 3 foot off the ground, and it's a flat 2x4 roost, so they have plenty of foot room.
Let's talk a little bit about their disease resistance.
That varies, but they do have some concerns, especially if you are raising them with chickens. Chickens can carry blackhead disease, which is terminally bad for turkeys. Thankfully, I don't have it, but it can be out there. And fowl pox is another one. They can be very sensitive to coccidia. So when you're at the feed store checking out the game bird or turkey feeds, most of them are probably going to be medicated because of how sensitive they are the first couple of weeks.
And another thing, they are really susceptible to respiratory infections.
That I've not had an issue with, but I bet they would be because they're sensitive.
If they're kept in confinement in tight quarters, it's going to be bad.
Yeah. And the key to that, to helping them not have those issues, and when you've got them in confinement, is to make sure they have really good ventilation.
Yeah.
And make sure that the bedding is dry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they don't tolerate dampness very well.
No, if they're in there in damp conditions and poor ventilation, they're going to get sick on you. And they can get sick and they can die at the drop of a hat sometimes.
If we look at, this is a good segue into this topic, basically the indigenous communities who originally semi-domesticated wild turkeys, and they were allowed to roam freely during the day and only brought in at night into simple bush-like shelters to keep predators out. But they always had plenty of ventilation. They always had access to pasture. And turkeys kept in confinement it's a recipe that I don't want to share with my fellow culinarians.
Yeah, for sure. Plus, because of the size of the bird, it makes their poops a lot bigger too.
Yeah. And what works around here, everybody who does pastured poultry also does a run of pastured turkey per year, and they time it so they're processing their Thanksgiving orders in time.
That flavor difference between what turkeys you raised and what turkeys you can buy from the store,
It's
It's
huge.
such a big difference in the depth of
Huge.
flavor, the color
Mhm.
even, because a lot of the store-bought turkeys have been injected with brine tenderizers. I think it was
Up
one
to
of the
10%
main.
usually. Yeah.
Yeah, and that can change the color of the meat.
And the flavor, and it's brine, so you're adding extra salts to the equation. So if you're on a sodium restricted diet, you probably should avoid that.
And
But a
another
homegrown
thing,
turkey that wasn't messed with, man, that's good.
that really contributes to the flavor is how much they move around.
Yes. The muscles
Birds
are
that,
being used
and we
properly.
talked a little bit about this last Thursday night on our Poultry Keepers 360 live stream, and how birds that are allowed to exercise and live out in an area where they can move around and be chickens or be turkeys, they're going to develop more flavor in their muscles. And the muscles, particularly the thighs, the leg meat and thighs, is going to be a little bit darker than birds you buy, the commercial birds, because they're raised in confinement. They can't move around.
Yeah. And I like that because they dry out less during the cooking process and retain more
Mhm.
flavor to be used
Mhm.
for soups and stocks and all that wonderful stuff.
Now I'm getting hungry.
I
Yeah.
know, and I was just thinking about the bone broth potential off of a pasture-raised heritage bird.
Oh man,
Man, save your bones after Thanksgiving and do a giant pot of broth that next day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Talk about some dense nutrition.
let's talk about processing turkeys, Mandolin.
Oh, that's a job.
And a lot of people really underestimate how big a job it is. If you were to compare processing a turkey to a chicken, and any age, how does that compare?
There's a
Effort-wise.
reason that our local processor charges $20 per turkey versus $4 per chicken. And once we saw that price, and then we started doing the math on raising them and all of that, we're like, "Well, you know what? We can do this. How tricky is it?" So they're huge. These are big birds.
Getting a bird upside down into a cone?
We don't use cones exactly. We have this fancy contraption to keep it peaceful for the bird. Because the one thing I always aim to avoid is stressing them out. I don't want them to even
Huh?
know we're up to anything. I want that to just be quick, easy, painless for them to where they don't even know. But you do have to eventually get them upside down and do that final part as fast as you can. But we have leg restraints that hold them upside down, and then we have a adapted bucket cone that we made to accommodate their bigger size. And we prefer to have it as a 2-person job just to make sure that we don't botch it, because it's really important that it's safe for them the whole way through and safe for us as well. Because those wings, if those wings get out of your restrainer, they're going to beat you up.
Yes.
And I took a wing to the face once before I learned how they go down. And then after that, your scald tank needs to be a lot bigger than what you'd use for a chicken. And when I was trying to figure out our scald tank, I was trying to envision how big of a pot 100 quarts is, 140 quarts. So I have a 160 quart stainless steel pot, which in hindsight, that's big enough for 2 turkeys.
But it
gives a
retains
lot of
more
room.
heat. It also retains more heat, so you have a quicker recovery.
That wraps up this episode of Turkey Talk 101. Thanks for tuning in to the Poultry Keepers podcast. We're so glad you joined us. But don't go too far. We've got more turkey tips coming your way in next week's episode as we conclude Turkey Talk 101. Until then, happy poultry keeping.